All right. I am live, I think. Well, hello, friends. Welcome back to SerenityOS office hours. All right. Immediately, some message gets held for review. Hello, Taro Boba. Hello, everybody. It is Friday, and we are going to do what we normally do on Fridays. First thing is, we wait for people to indicate that they can see me because I still don't trust YouTube. All right, here we go. That looks like I'm coming through. Great to see you folks here. So we're going to do what we always do, talk about SerenityOS and related projects. So if you have any questions or anything you would like to talk about this stuff, then we'll do that. And then Fikisar says, we can't see you, only hear. I'm not sure I believe you. But yes. Oh, wow. So many people here already. Very nice. Yeah. So as you may have noticed, I've been doing a lot more videos in the last 2 weeks, and it's been a lot of fun. I don't have anything to say about that specifically. Just that it's been fun, and it seems like people are enjoying the more regular content. So let's try to keep that going. So, so many people here, but no questions yet. Seeing a bunch of people with the golden yaks. Very, very nice. Sup Adler, Umberto, Kenneth, and Unexplored. So I guess if you didn't see, by the way, last night, JT called me up and said, hey, do you want to do some pair programming? And we ended up doing a video on JT's channel, which is right here, working on Yak inheritance. And 2 hours long. And by the end of that recording, I have to admit, I was running very low on oxygen and I got kind of loopy. But and kind of giggly, but it went okay, I think, and probably something that we'll try doing again if people find that format interesting. So I'm just gonna drop a link to that here in the chat. Fikisar says, do you actually code like that together? It looks much slower than alone. This was the first time we ever did that, so everything was kind of awkward, and we were not used to working together live or recording together or anything like that. So it was all new. I imagine that we would get a lot more efficient at it if we keep doing it. Let's see. Well says, hi Andreas, it's a long time since you talked about Rust. Have you recently got a chance to look at that language? I talked a whole bunch about Rust this year, and I wrote a lot of Rust this year. So I haven't had many chances to look at the language, but don't really have much to say about it. I mean, everybody already knows the good and bad things about Rust, I think, and I haven't written enough of it to really have anything to add to what everybody or what people already know. But I guess the main thing that's specific to me is that I evaluated it for my needs for SerenityOS, and I found that we needed to build something different because Rust was not a good fit. But that's not to say that it's a bad language by any means. It seems like a perfectly fine language, just not suited for my specific purposes. Carrie says, it was cute to see how much love you've been giving to Pixel Paint this week. Yes, it's been a lot of fun. And it all started because I tried using it in another video where I wanted to make like a little icon adjustment, and then I tried doing it in Pixel Paint, and I just hit like 10,000 little bugs that annoyed me so much that I just decided not to do the icon. And then I just wanted to come back and start working on Pixel Paint and improving it, because in SerenityOS, when some of the software bothers you in one way or another, we sort of take it upon ourselves to improve it rather than complaining or waiting for somebody else to do it. And obviously, I want to stick to that way of working, right? So I had to pick it up and start fixing the issues. And so far so good, although there is definitely a lot more stuff that needs work in Pixel Paint. And it's funny because like every time I post a video about it, then there's at least one comment with something that, yeah, that's like a good idea, what we should do next. So it's like this never-ending treadmill of things to do. And by the way, now would be a good time to insert ads, says YouTube. So just, I'm not gonna do that, but for some reason that's really funny to me that they keep popping this thing up to remind me. Let's see, Jungjin says, do you think Yak should have some form of borrow checker like in C++? So I think when it comes to borrows, we're going for a simpler model in Yak than what Rust does. So we're basically going to put a bunch of restrictions on how you can use references, and our instinct, at least now, is that we can give you 90% of the features, and that will cover basically everything that we need for Serenity. And by skipping that last 10%, we can make the language a lot more ergonomic, a lot more pleasant to use. And the stuff we're like leaving out or making awkward is not really that valuable, at least for our needs. So we'll see how that goes. But we definitely need some type of borrow analysis or aliasing analysis in order to do stuff like you want to do safe iteration over a container and prevent you from mutating the container while you're iterating, for example. That's a typical example. So say that you're iterating over a vector of elements and you don't want to mutate the vector while iterating, right? So you need language level protection for that, which we want to express somehow through borrow or aliasing analysis somehow. But JT had some ideas on how to implement that. I haven't started looking at it myself, so we'll see. Turbury says, love the Yak co-op with JT. Nice. Yeah, I'm glad you liked it. I enjoyed making it, although, as I was saying, I got pretty loopy by the end. I think next time I'm going to do it without closing the door to this room. Have a bit better flow of oxygen. Maybe it'll go a bit better. Let's see. DJ Wisdom said, hi Andreas, thanks for showing more love to Pixel Paint lately. What behavior in Pixel Paint still nags at you? Well, what nags at me? I guess it's not so much a behavior that nags at me right now, but just the absence of lots of little things, like just things I'm used to using from GIMP or Pixelmator or other applications. So the ability to insert text, for example, doing drop shadows, outlines, more advanced selections like arbitrary selections, wand selection, lasso selection, and rotations, all kinds of little things that you sort of take for granted when you're using a production quality application, and then they're all kind of missing. And then you have to go and just implement them one by one. And it's not that any one of them is like particularly nagging to me. It's just there are so many things missing before the application will feel like really, really good. And there's only one way to get to that point, which is to actually sit down and implement these things one at a time. So we're just gonna keep doing that. Adler says, hi Andreas, is there any Yak language official logo yet? Also, is there Serenity merch available anywhere? So there is no logo for the language yet, but you can find some Serenity merch items here on the SerenityOS store. There's like all kinds of little things, and I have some of them right here, for example, like this sticker, and I have all the cups and shirts, but not in the room with me right now. So that's something you can check out. Let's see. KS says, the daily videos make my day. My work morning starts with watching the latest AK video. Cool. So I'm thinking that the sort of half-hour videos are pretty good, pretty digestible as a format, right? Because I used to do a lot of like 1.5 hour, sometimes 2 hour videos, and they always feel to me like in order to watch that longer type of video, you have to set aside like a chunk of time almost. Whereas a 30-minute thing, you can kind of slip into a lot more slots in a schedule. So I have been enjoying making those recently, but I don't know. I'm not going to make a plan or anything, but I am glad to hear that you're able to start the day with checking some of it out. Let's see. Fikisar says, how do you render GUI? Always wondered what it's like in OS code. Like, does it just repaint active areas like every 1 millisecond, or is there something more complex? So it's definitely more complex than that. We don't repaint unless there is something to repaint in Serenity. And the way we achieve that is that we track we track invalidations, we call them. Sometimes they're called dirty rects. In X11, they're called damage rects. I think we tend to call them invalidated rects. But basically, whenever something changes on screen, then in the most obvious example, I guess, is the mouse cursor moving around. So we keep track of where the cursor is right now, and then when you move it, we repaint the area where it moved from and the area where it moved to. But we don't repaint everything else just because you're moving the cursor. Likewise, when we are blinking here in the terminal, what happens is that the terminal signals the windowing system like, hey, you need to, like, I'm dirty in this little area here where the cursor is blinking. Actually, I think we probably redraw the whole line, even when it's just blinking. But essentially, we try to inform the windowing system, like, what is the smallest possible rectangle right now that needs to be repainted in order to show the current state of the UI. And we are not perfect about it. Like, there are many cases where we draw too much, but we try to be diligent about like plumbing the actual invalidated rectangles through everywhere. It's an area where we can always do better. But so far, at least, it's very rare that you see actual like repainting as any kind of performance bottleneck, because we do a good enough job of coalescing and avoiding repaints in order for them not to show up in profiles. So let's see. Michael says, if you don't obey the YouTube overlords, I'm pretty sure they will recommend your channel less. They probably do. I think I'm not behaving like optimally. Very obviously, I'm not behaving optimally to like get growth on YouTube. You know, I should be saying, smash the like button, hit that subscribe, notification, like all of those things, and then click the add button everywhere. And there's like all these memes that you're supposed to do, right, in order to grow your channel. And I'm just not really interested in behaving that way. And if that costs me like promotion or exposure from YouTube, then so be it. I think probably every one of you would enjoy this channel less if I started acting that way. And I know I would enjoy it less, so we're just not going to do that. Let's see. Thomas Shirley says, hooray, office hours. Thought it was canceled this week. It was not canceled. I had to cancel last week because something came up last minute, but this week we are on. Lucas says, I noticed that the link to Twining's Earl Grey tea isn't present in the video description anymore. Why is that? Have you stopped being a tea lover? No, absolutely not. But the thing that happened with the Twinings is that nobody ever used the thing to buy a tea. And I eventually thought, you know what? Since nobody has bought anything through this link, if I just remove it now, that means I never have to figure out how to pay taxes on that. So I just got rid of it before somebody spent $2 and I had to spend 2 hours figuring out how to pay taxes on that. So it was I don't know. It was a nice idea, but ultimately it didn't really pan out. Let's see. Ooh, Kevin with the super chat. Thank you so much, Kevin. Kevin says, hi, Andreas. I'm a fan of input devices. Was wondering what keyboard and mouse you use. So my mouse is a Logitech M330, which I purchased because, as far as I know, it's the quietest Logitech mouse. And my keyboard, which I can't lift as easily, is a Logitech K280E, which is decently quiet. It's not my favorite keyboard, but I was unable to get my favorite keyboard, which is the K740. But everywhere I go, they're out of US English K740s. So I've been out of luck on that one. I think they might have stopped producing it also, which is a bit sad. Anyway, yeah, those are the things I use. And I actually updated my FAQ earlier, but I have the keyboard here, but not the mouse. I guess I could put in the mouse as well. So I will take care of that later, add the mouse there. Wellkosh says, I could also put the overly surprised face to my thumbnails. Right. Andreas Tech Tips. I don't know about that. Let's see. A. Brecca says, how do you keep such a big project such as Serenity accessible for new people to contribute? I think that's something that has evolved over time, for sure. But in general, we are very, I would say we're very welcoming to new people, but not like patronizingly or condescendingly so. People are expected to know how to program, and they're expected to be able to figure out Git, figure out GitHub, figure out our communication flow and stuff like that. And I think by treating people as adults and taking people seriously and expecting them to be autonomous, you know, and mature, then you tend to get an autonomous and mature contributor base. And that has just worked out pretty well so far. It's very rare that we have any kind of trouble with onboarding people. And I don't know for sure, but it seems to me that what we're doing is effective, and I think I suspect we would be less successful if we had a more hand-holding approach to onboarding new people. I think we are a very advanced programming project, right? It's not a very simple thing that we're doing, so it's important that people get the right idea right away, that like this is not a hand-holding environment. Like you're gonna have to figure things out for yourself. And I think in a weird way that is sort of what makes it accessible, that that you have to make it accessible to yourself, and that's what makes it accessible in a weird way. And of course we do have a very active community. So when new people come in, which they regularly do, there is a large community that they can engage with on Discord where, we have experts on all the different parts of the code and you can talk to them, and you can also just follow along with the discussion and sort of absorb how people are thinking and communicating with each other. And I think especially Discord has been way more of a boost to the project than I originally expected it would be, because it just creates this warm hub where so much communication is happening and people are just learning from each other every day, actively and passively, and it's been really beautiful to see the impact it has had on our community, and like our community has grown like crazy since we adopted it. So I don't know. I hope that answers the question, sort of. Let's see. Gadonk! Exclamation point says, you really demystified operating systems for me. I'm still really far away from an actual kernel, but now I'm finally able to implement the basic concepts like paging, interrupts, etc. Cool. Yeah, I think demystification has always been one of my pet goals, especially with making YouTube videos. I really enjoy showing people that, look, this thing that you think is difficult is actually just a set of things that you can do. You can learn how to do them. So I'm really glad to hear that you're making progress on your kernel, even if it's just the beginning stages. Rick Nam says, after having made a bunch of commits and clicked stop recording, do you compile each individual commit to test it before doing a git push? Sometimes, typically, yes. But it depends on the content. Like if it's just like moving metadata around and moving like non-code assets around, then maybe not. But if you're doing incremental transformations to code, then I tend to try the intermediate stages. Sure. Jack Cotter says, hi Andreas, really impressive work by you and the community on Serenity, especially its web browser. Nowadays it's an operating system inside an operating system. Really cool to see it being able to render more and more sites. Yes, that is really fun, and it just keeps going. Like in the browser channel on our Discord, Luke especially likes to just post random screenshots of random websites. And so every couple of days, there's like Luke posting some new screenshot of some website he's trying out. And that's really fun. And one thing that I love about making a browser is that it sort of forces you to, or it naturally brings you outside of the main big hubs of the web these days. There's like the YouTubes and the Facebook and Twitter and stuff like that. But when you make a browser, you go and like try to make every website work. So you step off the big reservations a bit and just go spelunking, and that's really great. Let's see. Fikisar says, might go back and find that tea link and buy a tea so you have some quality time with tax. Well, if you insist, then please buy a lot of tea. Let's see. Michael Hardiman says, I would really enjoy seeing you do a just for fun project using my favorite boomer systems programming language, Ada. Well, I guess I'm not really this type of developer who goes and does these like, oh, I'm just going to use this unusual language to do something for fun. I don't have any problem with that sort of stuff. It's just that I never got much entertainment from it or enjoyment from it. I'm much more enjoy doing just for fun, serious projects in a language I know really well so that I can make good progress. So that's sort of It's sort of like type of content you get from me. Let's see. Adler says, on the topic of demystification, you did that for programming languages for me. The 7-headed dragon that scared me about creating/maintaining languages is now a cute puppy that I like playing with. Well, that is great. I'm so glad to hear that, Adler. Programming languages were actually kind of similar for me at the start of this year. I had been a user of programming languages and in some ways an implementer of well-specified languages, but I never tried doing one from scratch without a specification, and it's been eye-opening and quite interesting. Let's see. The literal definition of bruh says, at a high level, how does the IPC system work? How are the messages plumbed to the right process? So I have a video about that, actually. And the way it works in general at a high level is that we are just we're serializing the messages and then sending them across sockets back and forth between programs. And there is, I think, yeah, KOTOR, the IPC system in SerenityOS. It's a little bit older, but the general concepts still apply. Also, I look so different. Look at that guy. Let's see. Poco Tom says, Namaste, love from Nepal. Would you mind sharing the cat wallpaper? I would not mind doing that. I have posted it on Discord many times, but I guess I can put it on my FAQ as well. I'll put it there after the stream. Actually, you know what? Let me make a little to-do here. So we are going to update FAQ with my mouse. And we're going to put the cat dog wallpaper in the FAQ. All right. We are diligent boys. Kaftei says, hello world, hope you're doing great. Me? I'm doing super great. I hope everybody else is doing great as well. And you, of course. I hope you're doing great, Kaftei. Let's see. George 858 says, hi Andreas, can you explain how the image decoding service works? The libgraphics image decoder try-create generates, returns a Refputer to image decoder, and the try decode image function returns a decoded image response. I don't understand where the code is that goes from a Refputer image decoder to a decode image response and how it works. Okay, let's go and look at that. I have not looked at that for some time, but maybe we can figure it out. So image decoder, try create. Okay, so this returns an image decoder, sure. And then what? And then try decode image is here. And okay, so this is an IPC service, right? Okay, so this is generated code. Yeah. Right. So what you're saying, you don't understand where the code is that goes from this to that. So let's see how the image decoder server looks like. Okay, so it's this API presumably that we're calling, right? Try decode image. We're passing it a buffer. Yup. So the code that's being called is the generated C++ from this API description here. And try, in this case, I think if you put the try prefix in front of one of our IPC calls, then it will try it. But then if you don't get a response, It will just fail without crashing. So typically, we assume that all of the IPC calls will succeed, and if the peer does not respond, then we consider that that IPC failure like a panic. Like we panic and crash the program, saying like, "Oh, our peer failed to respond," or "Our peer responded in an incorrect way," and we added the try thing so that you can call a service that is allowed to fail. Like image decoder is allowed to fail. For example, if we have a bug in our image decoders and we try to load a JPEG or something and we crash because we have bugs in the decoder, then it's okay for the image decoding service to crash. We want it to crash rather than crashing the client program. So try here just means that try calling this IPC API, but if it fails somehow, that's okay. Just continue execution here. And you will actually see here, if it does fail, we will print out to the debug stream that the image decoder died heroically. It fell on the grenade instead of us crashing, which is sort of the point of the image decoder service, is to absorb crashes instead of your application crashing, the service crashes. So to answer your question, the try decode image is here, and it forwards the call to the decode image message. So if you want to see the implementation of that, you need to look for decode image, I think. Or do I have regex enabled? Yes, I did. So that would be probably here, yeah. So in userland services image decoder connection from client, you will find the function that returns a decode image response. All right, I hope that at least gives you enough to go on that you can look around and find the rest. Let's see. SoulCloud says, thank you for your recent streak of YouTube videos. I really love daily quality content. Well, thank you for saying that. And I think it's you who keeps posting a comment on every video saying, please make more videos. So I hope I think I've been doing that almost every day. I missed one day, but I appreciate the encouraging comments. Maxwell says, any advice for a beginner coder who hates web dev stuff? If you hate web dev stuff, then do something else. That's my advice. There's so much more to programming than web dev. So if you want to work on low-level stuff or desktop applications, there's a million different things you can do. Just or you can make games. Just don't do web dev. Do something else. That's my advice. Thomas Q says, hi Andreas, when are you going to implement a C++ compiler so SerenityOS becomes fully self-hosted? I think never, probably, because we are building our own language now, and we already have a self-hosting compiler in Yak, and we're going to continue pushing that language forward until it becomes so damn pleasant to use that it will be annoying to use anything else, and then we'll see what happens next. But I have no interest in building a C++ compiler. I am honestly kind of checked out of C++ as a future, as like a language for the future. I think given the direction of the language and the lack of progress on real safety, it's not really a future language. That may, of course, change, but as things are looking right now, it seems to me that it's something that it's not the right thing to stay with permanently. So we do need to try something else. Let's see. Oh, Gadonk was asking about the font. That's actually something I did put in the FAQ. It's called Berkeley Mono. If you were talking about the coding font, so I will link that here. And if you were talking about my UI font that I'm using in Linux for all the UI text. That's Inter by Rasmus. So I would link that as well in case you want to check out Inter. Let's see. Jack Delahunt says, how much overhead is there doing an IPC call to an X server versus just a normal function call within the same program? Okay, there's quite a lot of overhead, actually, because you have to, I mean, it depends, of course. There's a fixed amount of overhead for like a fixed size message. And for complex operations, the overhead is typically relatively small. So for example, if you want to decode an image, in theory, it could be fast, although we're doing it in kind of an inefficient way. I think we're actually sending the whole image data across as a message. I think at least we used to do that. No, we're not doing that. Okay. We're sending it as a shared memory buffer. Okay. So yeah, then it should be really fast. But when you're decoding an image, then typically like there's a lot of work to do on the decoder side, and that little time slice, that little piece of time that you spend on sending the message back and forth is not that much in the great scheme of things. But for smaller operations, the relative size of the IPC, of course, is larger. So there is some point where you need to make a judgment call or a cutoff. I don't have like a number for that, but you can kind of get a feel for it. You know, like you don't want to do like tons and tons of thousands upon thousands of IPC calls, because they are, you have to send out serialized message on a socket. You have to wait for the other side to get scheduled, read the input, process it, and then send a response. So comparing it to a plain function call, the overhead is huge, but you really have to look at it in terms of the relative overhead when you're looking at like the time that the whole operation you're doing takes. So yeah, it's definitely something we could do better though. I think we early on we talked about doing something similar to what QNX does. I think somebody was describing to me that in QNX they have all these trickery where you send a message to another process, but then that process gets scheduled right away in some smart way. So the scheduler in the kernel is sort of aware of the IPC, and then you send your message to the other process, but then the kernel takes care so that message gets handled right away. And then when the response goes out, then the kernel again transfers execution back to the caller, within limits, so that you still have to schedule other processes. But I think there's a lot of stuff we can do to make IPC faster and more efficient by informing the kernel about what we're doing. Currently, the kernel is blissfully unaware. Like all the kernel sees is like socket buffers and going back and forth. And I think there's just like a huge number of different things we can try in that area. Let's see. Kook says, you mentioned that you wrote a lot of x86 assembly. What is it that you've done with x86 assembly? So I wrote my own BIOS for my virtual machine project, for example. And it's kind of a mess compared to the type of stuff I work on these days. But it's an example of like random x86 assembly code that I had to sit down and write. It's not terribly much code in terms of lines. It's like 1,000 lines. But I've also written like little games, and I wrote all kinds of strange little things that I needed, like little custom operating system for something that I needed at a job once. We had, I think I forget what exactly it was, but it was something like, it was a machine that had multiple modems connected to it. And then we wanted to multiplex those on a single serial port for whatever reason. We had to make something work on this old DOS machine, and I had to write like a little custom operating system that would multiplex multiple modems on a single serial port somehow. I don't know. It's just I've done all kinds of little hacks and tricks, but never anything really large in assembly. And I think that's just the nature of assembly, is that it's not really suited for making anything large. You just kind of use it as for little hacks and tricks. And I've also used it to write optimized versions of various routines, like bitmap fills and stuff like that. Let's see. CCLX says, are IPC calls asynchronous or synchronous? We have both. We have both. So if you look at our IPC system, so let's take a look at Windows Server IPC. So this thing right here means that this is an async message. So there's no response, no immediate response associated with this message. So you send create menu, and then you just, you don't get a response. So you can continue doing what you've been doing. But we can also do synchronous messages. So here, for example, destroy window doesn't have this marker, but instead has this marker, which signifies that what comes after describes the response you'll get. So this message here actually blocks until you get a response, and it tells you like a list of the destroyed window IDs, or yeah. So a bunch of our things are synchronous, like any kind of API where you're asking a question, like, oh, please get me the window rect of this window ID, then you synchronously get a response. But in general, we try to do as much as possible asynchronously. So whenever you're just blasting information at Windows Server, for example, so like you're opening a new application and then the app starts just streaming instructions to the Windows Server, like create this window, put a menu in it, add these items to the menu. We don't want to block every time waiting for the Windows Server to acknowledge each one of those little things. And that's something we used to do that early on, but then we removed it at some point, and it made application start up way faster because you didn't have to do that constant handshaking for every little atomic operation that we were doing. So yes, we have sync and async messages. Let's see. Bancas says, hello, Andreas. Really liking the new barrage of dev videos. Keep it up. Sure. I gotta try to keep it up. We'll see. Adler says, according to you, what's missing in Yak for you to try creating some GUI app for Serenity in it? What features are still missing for that? I think the main one really at this point is just inheritance and an ability to model the GUI library that we have. So if I wanted to instantiate a GUI button from Yak, then I would need to describe that it's a class in the GUI namespace. That I can already do, but I need to say that it inherits from abstract button, and then it needs to understand that like a lot of these functions are on different levels of the class hierarchy and inherits from widget and so on. So just making Yak able to understand inheritance and virtual functions, and then once it can understand those things, I think we should be able to write pretty serious GUI applications, but we'll see. So that's something JT and I started working on just yesterday. We just started hacking on it and made some progress, but obviously there's still a long way to go. But I'm optimistic that once we get that working, then we'll have what we need. Andy says, in Pixel Paint, layers are bound to their rects, while in other image editors, such as Photoshop, you can paint anywhere. Are there any technical hindrances preventing us from doing the same in Pixel Paint? No, but it's actually, I'm quite fond of the model where layers are bound to their rects. And it's the model used by GIMP, which I've grown quite used to, and I used to use Photoshop a lot in the past. But then I started using GIMP, and the like the sized layers, which have their own size, and it makes a lot of sense to me. And I guess I just like that type of workflow better. So it's not a technical hindrance. It's just that it's the model that I really like in GIMP. So I just replicated it in Pixel Paint. Critical Post says, it's Pixel Paint week this week, eh? Yes, it has been. But I've also been working on a lot of other stuff at the same time. So Symmetric Multiprocessing, for example, is in a pretty good place right now. Let me see if I can get that up and going. If we just say SMP on. So I've been doing a ton of work on SMP stability in the last week. And at least, yeah, it's been working pretty well. So I think the craziest stress test I had going was running like 8 instances of the JavaScript test suite at the same time, and I wasn't even choking on it, which was really cool. Maybe we can get that working right away, actually. It's probably going to make my computer a little bit sad, but let's see if we can get something like that up. Start a whole bunch of them. So yeah, as you can see, we are actually able to at least survive these types of workloads in the kernel. Like, it doesn't choke and deadlock immediately. Although sometimes it does. We still have bugs, but it's like radically improved from where we were a month ago, which is cool. And I've also spent a bunch of time trying to reduce the amount of time we spend in the kernel and give more time to user space. Now, these graphs here are not entirely right. I don't know, something in the math is wrong. I haven't looked at it, but we are scheduling, like the CPU is way busier than it looks. Like, I don't know why the graph is so stunted. But like, no way you could run like 8 CPUs for this long a month ago. So that has been great progress, and we continue to make progress on that. A bunch of other people have helped out here and there as well, which has been great. But for the videos, I've been mainly doing Pixel Paint just because it's relaxing and enjoyable. Let's see. Paul Rat says, you don't profile IPC yet in SerenityOS, do you? Might be the sort of thing to try to do before trying to improve it. I guess it depends. You know, like, obviously you need to measure it before you can even tell if you're improving it much. We would need some kind of debugging tool for that, I guess. Jack Delahunt says, we always ask you questions. It's time for you to ask us a question. Ooh, that's fair. Okay. Let's see, what do we ask? I would like to know. So YouTube is always, it tells me these things like the demographics of the audience, right? But I don't know if I can trust those numbers. I would love to know, like, how old are you? And are you a student or a professional or something else? That would be really interesting to learn, because YouTube just tells me these huge ranges and some geographic information. All right, look at that. Answers coming in. People are younger than I expected. Look at that. Andrew Castor, 27, professional memer. Yeah, I believe that. All right, so we got a whole huge range of people here, actually. My goodness. All the way from 16 up to 47. Cool. Oh my goodness, that's a lot more answers than than I'm used to reading. That's so cool. Darth Garth, 55 Python developer. Nice. This is a very respectable like range here. I thought it was going to be more narrow. Very cool. Very cool. Wow, people answers just keep coming in. I think this is one of the weirdest things about making YouTube videos, because I know that you're there. I know that you're listening and watching and you can hear me ask these questions, but I can't see you. Like, all I see is a camera and a lamp. And there's like this huge array of so many different people, and it's so cool that we can communicate through this weird thing. Anyways, I love it. Thank you so much for answering. Makes me a little bit, I don't know, emotional almost. Let's see, I just didn't, I saw some question here. From NM Tom saying, SerenityOS offers the ability to choose from a bunch of fun themes, change the font, hide certain panels, etc. How do you choose what customization options should be shipped with the system? Has there been a time where you rejected pull requests for an option because it added too much complexity to the desktop or an app? There hasn't been a lot of that, but I think people have a generally good taste when it comes to what kind of customizations we should offer. I think in general, I don't like to see customizations that just make things look worse. I very much like the Apple approach of don't give the user a way to make their desktop ugly. That's sort of a similar philosophy. I have a similar philosophy for SerenityOS. Like, just don't give the user tools to uglify their machine. Like, if they really want their desktop to be ugly, they have to work for it, you know? I don't want to ship anything with the system that gives you a bad experience. But it's been good about that so far. This is these are very cool. So we got a lot of students, but a lot of professionals in all kinds of ages. And you know, I am 37 myself. I don't know what to call what I do now, but you all know me, so I guess I'm some sort of a professional, just in a bit of an unusual context. And wait, is somebody having a birthday? Okay, where did that go? Slappy dang happy birthday, my human. Okay, I don't know what that was in context for, context of, but if somebody's having a birthday, then certainly happy birthday. Kyle Landman says, can you show an example of adding a synchronous IPC call to Windows Server and using it? Damn right I can. That sounds like something we can do right away. So let's add something. What might we want to add? Let's see. We can add. Let's add a very stupid API that just that adds two numbers together. So we'll say get sum, and you will pass it to int, and it will give you back the sum. Something like that. Something. Get it? Okay, so this is obviously a very goofy API, and we start by adding it to the Windows Server.ipc file. And then when we generate this code, or when we run the generator on this thing, it will add a virtual function that we then have to implement in Windows Server connection from client. So if we go here, we have this class called connection from client, which inherits from this thing. And this thing will then have the all the virtuals that we need to override. So here are all the things that existed previously, and now I also need to add some here. Okay. And then we can go here and also add the implementation of it. So connection from client, like this, right? And then I think now if we, let's see if we can just build this and it will work, or if I forgot something. All right. Wait, why doesn't it regenerate? Am I not editing the right file? Okay, so I already don't know why this doesn't work, but let's figure it out. So connection from client, there should be a file that has some. Oh wait, it's not some, it's get some. Yeah, thank you, Andy, for saying that. I didn't pick that up. Get some, yes, of course. That's just the wrong name. All right. Still doesn't like it. Why don't you like it? In the past, we've had a lot of trouble with invalidations. Oh, I see. So I'm using the wrong return type. Sure. Yeah, that makes sense. So it's not as simple as returning I32. I have to actually wrap it in a this message object that also gets generated for me. So get some response. That's the thing I have to return. Yeah. It seems like it's been a while since I've been adding IPC messages. Okay, there we go. So once that builds, that seems to have built indeed, then we can go ahead and call this from somewhere. So let's go ahead and do it in the terminal application maybe. So when terminal boots up, we will have it do a get some. So I think once we've instantiated the application object, we should be able to get to the Windows server via the connection to Windows server object, which we probably have to include this. Yes, and then here we can do a send sync. Messages, Windows server, get some. We'll add together 2 and 3. Okay, so we get that response into a thing, and then response sum is this. So response sum like that. Okay, let's see if this works. I feel like that should work. Wait, why doesn't it boot? Oh, maybe it's related to my, maybe that's an SMP deadlock actually. Yeah, that's probably what that was. Okay, so you can see terminal printed here on startup response sum is 5. So it did succeed in using the synchronous message. I think connection to Windows server. I think you can also use get some. Yeah, so yeah, I'm so outdated. Like it used to be you had to go through this whole thing here, but nowadays there's also the convenience function that gets generated like this, and this thing will actually return an I32 directly. So this is the old way, which is how I remember how to do it. This is the new way, which is a much nicer way of doing it. So this will also give you 5. that's basically how you do that. So add it to the IPC file, and then override the virtual in the connection from client class, and then you will be able to call it using the generated helper on connection to Windows Server. Hope that works. Let's see. Cyber Ranger says, do you think Mac will ever open source their operating system, not just for their employees? I wish, but I doubt it. El Cocos says, are executables linked to their icon in some way? How does the application menu know what icon to show? So there's actually two answers to that question. So the application menu gets all of the metadata from these things called app files, which are in root res apps. So we have these .af files, like browser.af, and it's this sort of ini file that tells us that, oh, browser should be in the category called internet, right? So it says category internet, name browser, executable browser, but it doesn't tell us which icon to use. That is embedded in the executable itself. So we do some tricks to bake the application icon into the ELF executable when we link the app. And that's how our executables are able to have icons. And I think personally, this is super neat. It's one of those things that I always thought was silly on Linux, that I originally came from Windows, like most people, I guess. And you're so used to seeing executables with icons, and then you come to Linux and like nothing has an icon, and that's sad. So obviously we gotta have those. So they're just baked into it, into the executable. And the trickery for doing that is in our build system. Adler says, will there be a monthly update live stream this month? I don't, we've never done a monthly update live stream, but we'll probably do a monthly update video like we have been doing every month for the last couple of years. One Infinitive One says, hi Andreas, I am an introverted programmer. I don't go out very often and I don't enjoy it much either. What advice would you give me for finding a girlfriend? Did you have this problem? How did you meet your wife? Oh, so I don't know if I had this specific problem. I guess I would say I've had this problem at times in life. Like there have been periods in my life when I didn't want to go out at all. I just wanted to stay inside. And I certainly spend a lot of time thinking, I don't want to do anything. I just want to stay home and do drugs. But in general, like if you want to meet new people and maybe you'd find a new romantic partner, the reality is that you have to make yourself a little bit uncomfortable. You have to do some things that are not your most comfortable preference. And I think you'll, like realistically speaking, if you want to meet a girl and have a good time, and for her to have a good time with you, you need to become a bit more comfortable being not just hiding at home, you know, and that takes some sacrifice. But at the end of the day, I think you'll find that it's worth making that sacrifice, making yourself uncomfortable, and learning to have a good time in social environments. But of course, there's a million different places you can go to meet a girlfriend. I would say if you're really introverted and you don't like going out at all, then the first thing you want to start doing is just finding something that you like going to, whatever that may be. And don't go there with the intent of like meeting a girlfriend, but just go somewhere with the intent of having fun. Because I think girls and guys and just people in general are attracted to others who are comfortable, attracted to others who are having fun. And if you want to meet somebody, you just need to become a person who has fun, a person who's fun to be around. So, it's hard to give specific advice, but in general, I think you'll want to make yourself a little bit uncomfortable and learn how to do okay in social environments, and then good things will come of that over time. But just don't treat it like this process that has like a trick to it, because I know that a lot of young guys especially sometimes get into this idea that like, oh, you just need to learn a couple of tricks and then you just learn the right trick and then you get a GF. But the real trick is like building a life that somebody would want to join you on, right? That's the real trick. Anyways, I hope that makes sense to you. Let's see. Radiant Mango says, as someone who has worked in both the US and Nordic countries, what was the good things of the tech people on either side of the pond? So tech people are very similar on everywhere in the world, I think. I mean, nerds gonna nerd, right? Like, we just like taking things apart, putting them back together, figuring out how they work, and like building things from nothing and assembling things to see what happens. It's just people are very similar, more similar than they are different. But there are, of course, some differences on different parts of the world. I would say, on average, the people in America are more interested in news and politics, and people, at least the people I've worked with in Europe, have been less interested, or very often completely uninterested. Like, no idea what's going on in other parts of the world, and perfectly happy about that, like just not interested. And honestly, I much prefer that type of environment where people don't care what's going on in the world, and people read the local newspaper and don't read the international news, that sort of thing. I don't know. It's just I find it a much more peaceful environment, and it's easier to be productive in that type of environment. And it seems to me, at least based on my experiences, that people on the American side of the pond, they, for whatever reason, have a hard time sort of disconnecting from the world news. But as tech people, everybody's basically the same, just nerds. Let's see. But yeah, you were asking what was the good things. The good things are people get really, really good at tech, and when they're giving an environment to thrive. And I would say in America, there are like these big companies where they allow large concentrations of really smart people to concentrate together and work on stuff. And that, I think that obviously allows those people to grow and to improve, because they sort of they boost each other up. And over here in Europe, and outside of America in general, you don't find quite those levels of concentration of smart people. Like, you have more scattered communities in Europe. And I would say that is something that is better in the US. But the people are just the same type of people. Carrie says, honestly, no one should concentrate on finding a partner. I met my boyfriend by accident, and I've been struggling with the question how to find a partner for a long time, but realized that it's silly. Yeah, I mean, I fundamentally agree with that. Like, the best way to find a partner is to stop concentrating on finding a partner. Or rather, if you are currently concentrating on finding a partner, the best thing you can do is to stop concentrating on that. I really think so. And just concentrate on just making a better life that somebody would want to be a part of instead. David says, hi, Andreas. Thanks for your recent videos. They have made my COVID-filled week a bit brighter. Have a nice weekend, everyone. Oh, dude, you got the sickness. Here's I hope you get healthy soon. That doesn't sound like fun. But glad to see you here, David. Let's see. Darth Garth says, I met my wife at work. She had a pic of her dog on her desk, then asked her about the dog, later became the dog dad. That's a nice and simple story, right? You see a girl with a cute dog photo on the desk, you ask about it, and then boom. It's nice when things are so simple and beautiful like that. I watch YouTube says, I noticed that you usually don't have people reviewing your code, i.e. you push straight to master rather than opening a PR. Any specific reasons for this, or is it just capacity bound? Not really. I sometimes do it, but typically ever since I started the project, it's just been my workflow is I just push up the stuff I'm working on, but if I'm unsure about something, then I tend to ask people or ask somebody to look it over. And I don't know, it's just the workflow that I've had since day one, since I started the project. And when I'm working on Yak, for example, then I almost always make a pull request because I'm less sure about things. So it's more about my level of certainty, but it's also something that evolves over time. Let's see. Firefox says, hey, Andreas, thanks for merging my pull request regarding the refactoring of spin locks. Thank you for doing that. I think the things you came up with were very nice. Like the way that we were, the abstractions we had for managing the interrupt state before your changes, they were crappy. So I'm really glad you made those improvements. Jesus joining the Golden Yak herd. Thank you for doing that. Enjoy the Golden Yak emote. Kook says, do you hit the gym? You look strong. I'm moderately strong, I guess. I'm not super strong by any means, but I do have some basic strength competence. Is the 88 Media asks, is the Serenity GUI tied to the kernel, or is it a user space program that can be stopped and even replaced? That's right. It is a user space program. The GUI is not tied to the kernel. It's just the kernel provides a frame buffer that can be mapped into memory, and then the Windows server, which is our GUI service, it just maps the frame buffer and then renders into it. And now would be a good time to insert ads, but we're not going to. Let's see. Aaron Clark says, hi, Andreas, can you explain a little bit how to properly save and load custom config settings from any files? So, what we typically do is we use the config server. So you would do something like, let me see if I can find some easy example of that. Config. Yes, you use the config API, and you say, it's a very simple API. You just ask for read this integer, write this integer, read this bool, write this bool, read this string, write this string. And then you are sort of specifying, this is the, effectively becomes the file name that gets looked up. And then here is the, I guess the category and the key. So it's a key value store with categories, and the top level in the hierarchy is then turned into a file name, and then we go and find the corresponding ini file in your user config directory. But yes, so the way that you access ini files is via the config API, and this API, by the way, needs some love, but we have a lot of things that need love, so they just have to wait in line. Let's see. Van Bro says, how can I use the debugger to test changes in SerenityOS? Currently, I'm adding printfs and restarting QEMU each time. Would rather use the CLine debugger. You cannot attach the CLine debugger to applications inside SerenityOS, as far as I know. That has never been done. Maybe, I mean, it's in theory, it's technically possible, but I have no idea how to hook that up, and I don't typically use debuggers very much, so it's not really something that interests me to work on. But I think there's been a port of GDB in the works. Brian has been working on that. I don't know what the state of that is, though. We also have our own debugger, SDB. Which could use some love for sure. It has integration with Hack Studio, although I haven't tested that in many months, so I don't know what the state of that is. Let's see. Tara Boba says, off topic, is the postal service in Sweden reliable? My experiences with the US postal service have generally not been pleasant, especially recently. I'm gonna go ahead and say yes. At least the main vanilla postal service in Sweden is fairly reliable. I think I've only ever had 1 or 2 things lost that didn't eventually turn up. And, you know, I've sent and received hundreds or maybe even thousands of things. So they seem decently reliable. In the US, in the time that I lived there, I definitely experienced some losses, but who knows why or what happened. But yeah, I would say that it's reliable, but I think everybody has a different experience, right? Because you're dealing with people, and like maybe I live in a place where the mail delivery person is diligent, and maybe somebody else lives in a place with a lazy delivery person who just doesn't always do their job, and gonna have totally different experience. Kook says, do you think in the future there could be someone else working on Serenity full-time like you? I would love to see that. I really would. I think that would be super cool. And I don't know if it's something that could happen. My gut instinct is that in order to do this full-time like I do, I don't think it's enough to only do the programming work. I think you also have to supplement it with content creation and stuff like that, like how I do with YouTube and other types of content. I like streaming, like we're doing right now. It seems to me that in order to make this whole operation feasible for myself, at least, I need to do all of these things. So I think if somebody else wanted to do something similar full time, they would need to also find like additional ways to generate the type of, I don't know what to describe it as, like the type of, you have to make people trust you, I guess, in order for them to support you financially in what you're doing. And it seems to me that I'm able to do that to an extent, right? Like by putting myself out here and making stuff regularly and speaking candidly and so on, and it gives people some kind of confidence in you. And I think that's whatever that is, you have to make something like that if you want to be able to get to the level where you can do only this. At least at this point in time, but maybe I am too narrow-minded because I'm only looking at it through the lens of my own specific experience. But it seems like that to me right now. I would love it if that would somehow change in the future. Maybe like, you know, innovations will happen and new ways of monetizing will come up, and they will open up new avenues for more people to do this, which would make me super happy. But I don't know exactly how to solve that. But I should say I'm super grateful that I'm able to do this, obviously. It would... I am just so incredibly grateful, and I feel like maybe I didn't say that enough recently. But the fact that I can sit here and continue to work on this day in and day out, it's really quite something. And I don't take a single day for granted. Anyway, let's see. Dr. Oidi says, I'm about to write the keyboard driver for my hobby operating system. Any advice on potential missteps? The main annoying thing about, if it's for a PC, then the main annoying thing, I guess, is the fact that the mouse and the keyboard use the same I/O ports. So you're kind of multiplexing between mouse input and keyboard input. So it's good to read a little bit more about how the 8042 circuit works, and just to know that, like, you need to distinguish between keyboard input and mouse input by looking at there's some bit somewhere that tells you if the buffered packet is from the keyboard or the mouse. And I certainly wasted a lot of time before I understood how I have to take care of that. Andrew Castor says, what would need to change for you to accept an invitation to travel to a programming conference and give a talk in person? I don't know. I guess... I don't know what we need to change. That's such a good way of phrasing the question, because I immediately have to think. Makes me think, like, what is it right now that causes me to say no to these things? I think the reason that I've turned down every in-person thing so far has been that it seems to me like I can get a lot more things done where I am right now, and I can reach people via YouTube way better than I can reach people at some conference. And it's more like going to a conference seems like that's probably a good way to do networking. But maybe I don't know if it seems particularly useful for getting any of my message out there. Like it just seems like a lower reach than the platform I already have. But at the same time, there's definitely some comfort zone thinking here. You know, like I'm comfortable being at home with my familiar setup and not having to look anybody in the eye when when I'm talking to them. So I would like to challenge myself to do things like that, for sure. So I don't know. Maybe somebody just needs to ask me at just the right time. Maybe that's what needs to change. I don't know. But you have made me think. El Cocos, thank you for joining the Golden Yak herd, by the way. Enjoy the cool emotes. And Dominic Marcinowski as well. That's a cool avatar right there. I was playing... what the heck is that game called? I was playing it a few weeks ago, but I don't remember what it's called. Nier Automata. Yeah, that's the one. Welcome to the Golden Yak herd. Enjoy the cool emotes. Let's see. Dominic was asking, I have 2 questions. Does Yak have interfaces? If not, do you think they would be useful? And have you considered adding C#-like properties? It does not have interfaces right now. They might be useful, but we are currently working on, Jesus is working on traits, and JT and I are working on inheritance. But we don't have anything like, we don't have interfaces specifically in mind. I don't know. We're kind of, I guess the way that we're building the Yak language is that we are looking at the exact things that we want to solve, like the exact programs that we want to write in the language, and then only developing the language to be able to support that. And we're specifically looking at what do we want to do for SerenityOS. So in the early stages, it will be very much like, how do we take this program and express it in Yak? And then what do we need to add to Yak for that? I think for stuff that's sort of far outside or outside of the programming paradigm that we've been using up to this point in SerenityOS, that will maybe come a bit later once the language is strong enough to implement the programs that we already have. And as regards to C#-like properties, well, it's something that I keep thinking about in C++ sometimes, and then I decide, I don't know if I care enough. There's definitely some ergonomic aspects to smart properties like that are interesting, but I don't know. It seems like it's not something that we want to do right now, because it's just slapping on a new way of slapping on a new feature on the language that we haven't been using so far. And much like the first question about interfaces, it's like, well, we don't need this to write the code we have today, so let's not add features that we don't immediately need. Maybe later. I guess that's the answer to that. Let's see. Ooh, Jesus with the super chat. Thank you so much for that. Jesus was asking, hi Andreas, any plans to do more Yak development soon? I'm using it and quite enjoying it. I am glad to hear that. We just did a video yesterday on JT's channel. I will link it here for you. That's me and JT working on Yak for 2 hours until I get a bit oxygen deprived and loopy. And definitely gonna do more stuff soon. Let's see. Dun, dun, dun. Did I miss some question? I mean, I was thinking of this one. Yeah, Andy was asking, how involved is the wife in what you're doing with SerenityOS and here on YouTube? Well, my wife is, she doesn't use SerenityOS and is not directly involved with what I do here, but she did make the song that I use as the theme song for my hacking videos. And let me go ahead and link to that, actually. Let's find it. Dun, dun, dun. This is her channel, by the way. Subscribe to Catalin. And this is the song that I've been using as the theme song for the channel. And who knows what type of things we would do in the future. We'll see. We have been talking about doing something kind of funny, but I'm not gonna give any details about that until we actually make it. Let's see. Samu698 says, I watched your video about removing the big lock from syscalls, and it made me curious about Serenity's lock infrastructure. Can you give an overview of it? And also, what is a lock refputer? Right. So I guess you mean in a kernel context. So in the kernel, there are two main types of lock. We have spin locks and mutexes. And the main difference between spin lock and mutex is that the mutex can block the current thread. If you try to take a mutex, somebody else is holding it, then we will block, which means that we will go to sleep. And this is sometimes totally fine and sometimes super inappropriate. So typically in system calls, so in code that runs in response to user requests, so for example, the open syscall or the read syscall, stuff like that, using a mutex is perfectly fine if you need to block, right? Because maybe you want to block on IO and wait for whoever's keeping the file system busy to finish. But inside the kernel, when there are many contexts where it's not really okay to block. Maybe we're doing something with a resource and we can't really block. We have to finish right now so we can give up that resource. And for those cases, we use spin lock. So spin lock is the more common lock, I think, in the kernel. Mutex is used more sparingly. And there are two types of spin lock also. There's regular spin locks and recursive spin locks. And recursive spin lock just means that you can take the same spin lock multiple times nested in the same thread of execution. And a plain spin lock, if you try to take it while you already have it, you will deadlock, and I think we'll assert. But those are the two main things. And then in order to use these, it's like traditionally, we always think that it's kind of annoying when you have a spin lock and then it protects some other variables, and then you have to know about that. And like before you access these variables, you have to take this lock. So to make all that stuff less error prone, we have these things called spin lock protected and mutex protected. And the way you use those is that you say spin lock protected of some type. So for example, well, these are all return types. So right here, for example, is one in the open file description class. So it's a spin lock protected state, which means that a whole instance of this struct right here is protected by a spin lock. And then the API of spin lock protected is very simple. You have a with function that you call and provide a callback, and then that callback is invoked with the lock held. So if we look at that state thing in open file description, we can see how it's used. mstate with, yeah, so here's how you would use it. So you call with and you pass in a callback lambda, and then this code here is executed with the lock held. And there's no way to access this stuff inside of the state without taking the lock. So we protect you at compile time from accessing these things that must be protected by the lock. And we've been doing a bunch of cleanups, like porting more of the kernel code over to spin lock protected and mutex protected. And at least in my view, it's been very successful because now it's much, much easier to understand and reason about which locks protect what, because it's enforced at compile time. There are still some sort of freestanding or decoupled locks where it's just like, here's a spin lock and here's some state that it guards, but we're trying to move away from that. And then lock refputer and lock null lock refputer. These are kind of strange. They are this weird remnant of early work on SMP support in our kernel. So what happened was when we first started doing SMP, then we had race conditions all over the place because most of the kernel did not use locks in the right place, and it was all very, very sloppy. And one of the hack solutions that we did early on just to make SMP boot at all was that we added a spin lock like to the Refputer itself. So lock Refputer is essentially a Refputer with a built-in spin lock. And the thing you can use this for is that if you have a lock Refputer, let me see if we can find something. Let me see, what's a good one? So like this thing right here. So lock Refputer to inode. If you copy, or if you assign to this inode pointer here at the same time as somebody else is reading from it, then you might have a race, because if you want to dereference this thing and add a reference and add a ref to the inode that's pointed to, while somebody else is replacing the content of this pointer, then there's like a window of time where your pointer can get deleted before you have a chance to slap a ref on it. So before you have a chance to increment the ref count, somebody goes and deletes the pointer, and there's a race there. And the way that we addressed this race was to just put the spin lock into Refputer. And previously, this just used to just be called Refputer, and Refputer worked like this everywhere. But this built-in spin lock in Refputer adds a huge amount of overhead, very, very noticeable in profiles. So we started moving away from it and replacing it with stuff like spin lock protected instead. So if you have this thing inside of something that's spin lock protected, like we do right here, for example, we have a Refputer in state, and state is spin lock protected, then we can just use Refputer, because you don't have multiple threads accessing this thing at the same time, so there's no chance of a race window there. And lock Refputer now, I recently renamed it to lock Refputer and reinstated the original Refputer so that you can sort of tell them apart. And the goal is to eventually get rid of lock Refputer and have stuff be explicitly protected by spin locks where necessary, instead of having this sort of automatic spin locking that happens. So I hope that makes sense. Kook said, do you listen to ABBA? Not usually, no. Let's see, Clement says, hello there, I'm still at work, but just wanted to say that the recent batch of videos have been pretty enjoyable. Well, thank you for saying that, Clement. I'm glad that you've enjoyed them. Darth Garth says, do you have pets? And Chris accurately mentions that I do have a cat. I do have a little cat. And she is very precious. Sam Bowman says, when would you want to use a spin lock instead of a recursive spin lock? It seems to me like recursive spin lock would be better for almost all use cases. Right, so recursive spin lock is more convenient in basically all cases, but it's also bigger. So the regular spin lock is smaller, takes less space, and does less stuff. So if you can handle it, then the plain spin lock is strictly faster and smaller, right? So recursive spin lock is kind of a kludge a little bit. Okay, Joel gifted 5 memberships. Thank you for doing that. Oh, isn't it going to say who they go to? Wonder how that works. Samu says, thank you, very interesting. So lock Refputer is like spin lock protected Refputer. Kind of. Yeah, it's kind of it's sort of an implicitly spin lock protected Refputer. and it is, yeah, it was something that made sense at the time just to get things working. But now that we have better tools, we can move away from magic spin locks and do explicit locking on everything instead. So we get a better understanding of what the code is doing. Oh, here goes. Finally, we see the. This is so weird. Like I would have expected it to gift them out right away, but it seems like it takes a moment. Cool. Joel says just paying it forward. That is real nice. Very, very cool. Let's see. Dominic said, I haven't said that yet, but you are my biggest inspiration to be a programmer. Oh, thank you for saying that, Dominic. I really appreciate it. It's maybe my favorite thing about making stuff online, to be able to inspire people and get people to, I guess, get people to believe that they can make things that they previously thought were not possible to make. So thank you for saying that. Let's see. Oh, Sam Bowman with the emotes. Stepan says, so I'm finally getting into some Serenity development. I got it building and set up in CLion in the past few days. Now I want to teach a browser and the host utility to work with Unicode IDNA domains. Oh, that would be sick. That would be super cool. And I bet you could do that. I don't know exactly how to implement it, but that seems like a worthy yak to take on. Darth Garth says, do you use SQLite in Serenity? No, we do not. We have our own SQL implementation called libsql, and I haven't seen anybody working on that for quite some time, actually. I wonder when the last time was I saw. But I was playing with the libsql just the other day, and it was neat. Let's see. This is like unrelated refactoring. When was the last time somebody actually worked on it? Oh, here we are. February 11th. Yeah, so it's been like half a year. Maybe it's time for a libsql resurgence. We'll see. I'm still waiting for something to actually use I don't know if I should say libsql or libsql. I'm gonna say libsql. Yeah, so the main problem with libsql in our repository so far has been that nothing else uses it, which I think kind of limits its growth potential. And once we find something for it to do, I think it will become a lot more valuable to do improvements to it. And there's a lot of things we could do with it. It's just that we haven't like picked one and started on it yet. We'll see. Eventually, I guess we'll want it for some of the web platform features. Let's see. Kenneth says, maybe I missed it, but did YouTube's demographic match the answers in the chat? You know what? I'm gonna see if I can open the demographics right now, and then we can see if it feels like it matches. Where do I get these? My analytics. Look at this. Publishing more videos helped your channel get more views than usual. Isn't that nice? And here you can see how much cash I'm estimated to make from this. Let me see real quick here. Audience. Wait, I forget how to look this up. I'm just gonna bring it over here for a moment. All right, we have the top geographies, United States. Germany, United Kingdom, Sweden, and Canada. So people were not really saying their locations, but we'll see here. Age and gender, here we go. So the age groups. Based on this, I would say it's pretty much matches the numbers that we saw in the chat, actually. A lot of males checking it out, but it is what it is. Let's see. Instance Sarcasm IO says, what do you, this is recently the interest in SerenityOS has decreased on the part of the community. I'm not sure I understand the question. Interest, are you saying interest has decreased? And you're asking why I think that is? I'm not sure if interest has decreased or increased. I feel like interest is pretty much the same as always. But I don't know. How can you tell? What number? Where's the number of interest that we can look at? As far as I know, our community keeps growing. You know, we have the number of people joining our Discord is constantly increasing. More people coming to YouTube watching the stuff. More people contributing to the code base, but you know, the old people leaving, new people joining. It's hard to say what interest really is, or how to measure interest in something like this. But at least to me, it seems like we're doing okay. Let's see. Did I miss a bunch of stuff? Michael said maybe use libsql for a leaderboard in solitaire. Maybe. Let's see. Darthguard says there are still people hacking on the Amiga platform decades later. Yeah, that is true. And some things are just timeless. And I guess I would love it for SerenityOS to become timeless, but I think you don't get to decide what becomes timeless. It's just something that you have to let things play out and see what happens. Abigail says, what features would you like to see in SerenityOS before you start using it as your main platform? So in practical terms, I want to be able to browse the internet, like watch YouTube videos and record YouTube videos, live stream, stuff like that. But even before that, just needed to work for more parts of the internet, and I needed to do fast builds with many CPUs. If Serenity can build Serenity in, like, let's say within 80%, or no more than 20% slower than Linux can build it, then yeah, maybe then it's good enough and it's time to switch. But right now, like, building anything on Serenity takes way too much time. So that's definitely an area where we need to improve. But then, like, in terms of truly switching over, there's all the video related stuff, which will take a bit more effort. Krister says, is there some data structure like the red-black tree you'd like to introduce into Serenity but didn't get the chance to do so yet? Sure. There are lots of data structures that I would like to use for something eventually, but it's one of those things where, like, just because you know of a cool data structure doesn't mean that you should jam it into a project where it's not doing something good or like making something better. I know a lot of data structures I would like to use just because it's fun to implement them, but we need to find a proper excuse to actually use them. So we'll see. So far, like, we have we have the data structures that we need. Maybe the one data structure that we need but don't have yet is an intrusive hash table. So that's probably going to happen sooner or later. But there's a lot of stuff that we don't have, we don't need, but is pretty fun. And they will happen when we find a need for them. Jörg says, your project is awesome, and I think your attitude towards many things is great. Cool. Thank you for saying that. I hope I have a good attitude towards things. It's hard it's hard to say what a good attitude is. I guess as long as you are open-minded and willing to listen to other people, then things are going to be okay. Oh, Jörg with the super chat. What is this goofy animation? That's a dancing pear. Thank you, Jörg, very much for the dancing pear super chat. Really appreciate it. Kook says, can Serenity compile itself? Have you ever done that? I've done that like some years ago when the build system was a bit simpler. I think right now we are back to not being able to compile the whole system, although I haven't tested it. Tim, I don't know if Tim is here. Tim Schumacher works on stuff like that, and I know he has been futzing around with like building big stuff on Serenity, but I don't know what the state of it is. Oh, he says compiling it works. It is slow though. Yeah, that's pretty much it. So if we can make the SMP stability good enough to survive a full compile, then that's when we start to get some real opportunities to like actually go fast. Because we, as long as we're bound by a single core, like the build is always going to be slow. But if we can get building on multiple cores without hanging or crashing the kernel, which it feels like it's within reach. Like we're not that far out from being able to do that. I think just need to iron out the remaining deadlocks, which there are not that many left, at least not the ones that I've seen. So and then we'll get more like a real number of where the performance is at, and can take measures to improve. Plus hacks. I wonder what kind of hacks they are. Oh, well, look at that. It's 17:55. So let's start wrapping it up. So Tim says, I don't have a bare metal setup, but I imagine it would be equally slow. Yeah, I think in general we are a bit slower on bare metal than we need to be. The main reason being that when we run in QEMU, then we benefit from the host system like Linux. We benefit from the Linux page cache. And if we are left to our own devices on bare metal, then we have some pretty inefficient access patterns for stuff like block device reads, right? And that's an area where we can definitely improve a huge amount. We're not caching blocks or inode pages in a very efficient way at all, and we can do way better, and we will have to do way better if we're going to run fast on bare metal, I think. Dominic says, it just clicked for me, but you didn't butcher my name. Do you know Polish by any chance? I do not know Polish, no, but I'm glad I didn't butcher your name. I've had many Polish coworkers, so I have some clue of how to say the letters, but not too much. But it's Marcinowski, right? Marcinowski? Marcinowski? Now I'm losing confidence in my ability to say it. Yes, so we're gonna wrap it up here. Thank you all so much for coming to office hours. I really appreciate all the company, the comments, the super chats, and the people joining the Yak herd and all the good stuff. And I hope everybody's going to have a great weekend. I think I'm definitely going to be doing programming this weekend. If you end up working on SerenityOS or any of our projects in the same family, then come to the Discord server and let's chat, share screenshots, all the good stuff. Because programming is better when you do it with your friends. So come do it with us. Anyways, I'll see you all next time. Bye.